The Arabian Peninsula nation of Yemen might be the spiritual home of Osama bin Laden, but it's fast earning a reputation as a launching pad for new recruits to an Islamic jihad. ABC's Foreign Correspondent program has aired startling revelations of young Australian men training in Al-Qaeda training camps. Under scrutiny are the movements of 20 or so Australians on an ASIO watch list. Tonight we look at the case of an Australian who fell foul of the government and a botched attempt to bring her back to this country. Trevor Borman reports.
It's long been a destination for the devout. The religious schools of Yemen have lured many young Australian Muslims with the promise of a further education. But ASIO is struggling to keep tabs on 20 Australians who seem to have vanished from their radar in Yemen. The ABC has been told by an Arab intelligence agent that he saw 5 Australians at Al-Qaeda training camps in southern Yemen. His information is explicit, that the Australians were engaged in not only religious studies, but training in weapons and explosives. This is a reenactment of my conversation with the intelligence operative.
These Australians and other students are being trained for terrorist missions. No question. Their value is in their Australian passports.
With Al-Qaeda entrenched in Yemen, foreign religious students are under intense scrutiny as Western intelligence organisations and local agencies scramble over each other for information. Former Australian diplomat, now consultant, Philip Eliasson, lived in Yemen for several years. He says it can be challenging to work out the associations and motivation of any visitor to Yemen.
The authority of the Yemen location for religious cultivation and development is undisputed, and that's why it's such an attractive place for people to head to become a rounded scholar, if you like, and maybe a radicalised one.
But now under scrutiny is the way the Australian government deals with people it calls persons of interest. Shiloh Giddens was a young woman from country New South Wales who moved to Yemen with her 2 small children. She protects her privacy. There are no images of her in the public domain. A Muslim convert, Shiloh Giddens lived in this apartment in the capital Sana'a.
She was raising her 2 children and she was teaching English. And when she had spare time, she was studying Arabic language. And in that way, she was able to live her life according to her beliefs.
But in April last year, she was told her Australian passport would be cancelled, a move designed to lure her back to Australia. ASIO has concluded Ms Giddens held what it called an extremist interpretation of Islam and was a security risk to Australia and foreign countries.
She didn't want to come back to Australia. She was quite happy living in Yemen. She wanted to be left alone. And we would really like to know why the government has cancelled her passport. To date, we don't really know why. They've just put up a couple of very vague sort of reasons. They really have to do better than that, and an Australian citizen deserves more.
Bringing Shiloh Giddens back to Australia would enable ASIO to keep an eye on her here. But it didn't quite turn out as expected. Aware of the security alert surrounding Ms Giddens, the Yemenis arrested her instead. It was left to her Yemeni lawyer, Abdul Rahman Barman, to look after her children. And so began a tussle. Australian diplomats had the job of freeing Shiloh Giddens, while the Yemenis wanted her as well to extract as much intelligence information as they could.
It's not just a holding room for someone until the Australians take them home, so to speak. They become a commodity. Then it will be subject to bargaining, and political bargaining. It might even be used in a way to ratchet up security cooperation.
It was a cumbersome episode of how 2 countries with mutual security interests couldn't quite work together.
Really, the whole matter has been a complete stuff-up by the Australian government. I think it's something that could have well been anticipated, but they're inexperienced and they're acting out of their depth.
Shiloh Giddens is now back in Australia and she wants her passport back. Now stigmatised by an adverse ASIO assessment, that's proving difficult. Federal Attorney-General Robert McClelland wasn't available to talk to the 7:30 report today, but in a statement he said he wouldn't comment on individuals who may or may not be of security concern. A number of Australians have been drawn to extremist figures in Yemen, including to Anwar al-Awlaki, an al-Qaeda-linked cleric based in Yemen, he said. Al-Awlaki is the American-born firebrand implicated in several recent terrorism cases. He is prepared to talk about the Shiloh Giddens case, posting this internet speech late last year.
قدمت الحكومة الإسترالية طلبا إلى الاستخبارات الأمريكية التي قامت بدورها بأمر الحكومة اليمنية أن تسجن الأخت. وأما الأخت فكانوا يحققون معها 6 ساعات يوميا وهي واقفة.
We have no evidence that Shiloh Giddens did associate with extremist groups, and ASIO has steadfastly refused to elaborate on its assessment of her.
Trevor Borman with that report, produced by Jacquelyn.